All right, let's get to the second game of the Saturday triple header. Cincinnati Bengals 30, Denver Broncos 24. This might be the best game of the season. Bengals move to 8-8. Broncos fall to 9-7. Remember, Bengals needed to win to stay alive. They do it. And these teams are both battling for that final wild card spot. It comes down to the Broncos, Bengals, or the Dolphins. The Colts are officially eliminated. Denver win, and they're in next week against Kansas City, presumably against Kansas City's backups. Cincinnati has to play Pittsburgh, have to win that game. Cincinnati would also need Miami to lose. So the order of operations here is Denver, they win and they're in. If they lose, it's on Miami. If they get the win, they're in. And then if Miami loses, Cincinnati has to win, and they're in. If everybody loses, Denver gets the 7 seed. What a game this was.
Yeah,
Bengals, Broncos.
A lot of things needed to break Cincinnati's way for them to make the playoffs. A lot of things still need to break their way for them to make the playoffs, but they did. Like a few of them already went their way, including winning this game. Remember, way back it was like even if they win, they only get up to 14% to make the playoffs. It's up to 17%. So a few other things that had to go their way have gone their way, but it's still unlikely based off all the things that still need to happen. This game, so the first half was entirely drab, nothing really happening. It felt like the entire first half was just Cincinnati failing in the red zone repeatedly. Denver.
Red zone and fourth down. Really,
yeah.
That was it.
Right. And maybe based off later in the game, we knew why they were going for so many fourth downs because their kicker can't be trusted to make a short kick. But yeah, Denver held multiple fourth downs early in the game. Fourth and goal they held. They did a really good job. The Bengals just couldn't convert at all. And the first half was kind of fairly nondescript. And then whatever they were, whether it's motivational talking or, let's take a Red Bull at halftime, everybody was transformed after the half, both sides of the ball. And the second half was insane.
I thought it was it was 7-3 Bengals at the half. I still thought it was a really good game. I thought it was it's not, we joke about it's like the 44-42 game. That's not necessarily the best game in the NFL. You can have a good, hard-hitting game. I thought this was, because the Broncos kept making those stops and the Bengals were moving the ball. The Bengals were getting stopped on the goal line. I broke out the stat. I had no idea what I was going to find when I looked this up because it felt like Cincinnati was really not equipped to run the ball in tight goal-to-go situations. I looked it up. I don't know if you saw the stat I posted. This year, their running backs, Cincinnati, goal to go, so 1 or 2 yards, goal to go, 12 carries for -5 yards this season in 4 touchdowns. That's what Cincinnati has. They're not equipped to run it in. They were getting stuffed up front, but then they finally converted some fourth downs, and Joe Burrow hits T. Higgins. They go up 7. Bo Nix comes back, though. And this is all the rookies this weekend was so impressed with how cool they were under pressure, how cool they were when circumstances weren't going their way. Nix has a few throws he would want back in this game, but he comes back to tie it, hitting Marvin Mims for 51 yards. The ball traveled, 68 yards in the air, 67 plus?
Yeah, 67, I think.
An absolute bomb from Bo Nix, but Marvin Mims getting behind the defense. That tied it up. Then the Bengals come back again. They go up 7, and then with 14 seconds left, and we'll get into, some of this late game decision making and everything. The Broncos come back again. Bo Nix to Marvin Mims, 25 yards, contested catch in the end zone, and eventually, after all sorts of stuff happens in the end in overtime, Burrow hits T. Higgins for the game winner for 3 yards. But the late game decision making and situation stuff also not great in this game, particularly for Cincinnati, which let Denver back in for that game tying touchdown at the end of regulation.
Yeah, I mean, Bo Nix was impressive in turn. That 67-yarder, obviously ridiculous, which highlights the arm strength and the physical talent that he does have that I think gets overlooked too much. I mean, we've seen earlier in the season and in this game, the guy's ability to scramble and make plays athletically is really impressive. He's not just the kind of marginal athlete or more athletic than, people give him credit for. He's legitimately athletic. He makes plays where he takes off and embarrasses high-level athletes on defense. And evidently, he's got the arm to throw a perfectly in-stride pass 67 yards downfield. And that was one where, it was 67 yards, and it needed to be to get it to hit Mims in stride.
To get behind the
like
defense.
If it was shorter than 67 yards, it would have forced Mims to hold up and wait on the ball. To get it to where Mims was going to end up, it needed to be 67 yards. That was a really, really impressive throw. Okay, he had a couple where he missed. He missed a shot to Courtland Sutton in a sort of cover 2 hole shot late in the game. Now they got the touchdown anyway on that drive, but that was an easier pass that he didn't quite connect on. He missed Troy Franklin in overtime, right? That should have been a big play. So he missed some as well, but really impressive play to keep themselves alive in the game and kind of repeatedly answer.
Reminds me a little bit of Ryan Tannehill. I always cite the one year, maybe 2016 or 17. He had maybe Tannehill, the 2 best throws in the NFL that year. And nobody looked at Tannehill and was like, oh, big arm talent guy.
Right.
But on those particular throws, it was like 50-plus yards while getting hit on a deep post, showing that he had it in him. That's what I felt from Nix. Like, nobody's expecting this from him because there is so much dink and dunk to his game. Same thing at Oregon, the way they've played with Denver. I think it is a great, it's great to show the potential here. He had a nice touchdown to Sutton and the 2 to Mims, showing the ability to get the ball down the field. Nix also had a couple incredible scrambles, like to help to keep these drives alive and everything. There were so many key plays in this game where if you looked back, be like, well, this was the key play. Patrick Surtain forcing a fumble on T. Higgins, that was a key play at one point that eventually didn't matter. But at the very end, the Bengals get into field goal range. It's a tie game, and they have a chance to run out the clock and kick a field goal. Chase Brown runs the ball. Instead of going into the end zone to go up 7 with a minute something left, he goes down, probably smartly at the time, except he goes down and hurts his ankle, rolls up on himself. And the Broncos had 1 timeout left. Had he just slid and not gotten hurt, Broncos would have used their final timeout. The Bengals kneel it out and presumably hit a 22-yard field goal to end it. Presumably, because Cade York eventually missed, like a 33-yarder.
Presumably, though not definitively.
But not definitively. But because Chase Brown got hurt on the play, Denver didn't have to use the timeout. The Bengals had to use their timeout, and then Cincinnati sneak it in on the next play from Joe Burrow. And I don't know if it was a bigger mistake because Denver probably would have had the ball back. Their choice was get the touchdown, give Denver about 1:20, so that's the sneak, or take a knee, kick a field goal. You're up 3, and you give Denver about 50 seconds with no timeouts. I think that's about a push there, and the Bengals chose the touchdown, and then Denver goes down and eventually hits the game-tying touchdown to send it to overtime.
I think it's always dangerous when you're talking about sort of effectively sacrificing a play because you assume you can get the touchdown on the next play. Like, I don't know that you can ever assume you're going to get the touchdown, even though it's like you just talked about all the Bengals.
You talking about Chase Brown?
No, the Bengals choosing to score as opposed to like the broadcast was sort of saying, well, you could just take a knee, right? Burn a play, force Denver to call a timeout or chew up some clock and then score the next play, right? But I don't know that you can guarantee. You can't just assume you're going to get the touchdown.
Yeah.
Like this one looked easy, and they walk it right up the middle, and you're like, well, why didn't you chew some more clock? There's like they could have got stuffed. You just talked about all the plays where they've been stuffed from the 1 or the 2 yard line. If that had happened, they would have needed the next down to score anyway. Like, take the touchdown when you can take the touchdown, and if that costs you some time, you just have to live with that. I think they just got unfortunate by Brown going down injured, which caused a timeout as opposed to being able to force Denver to use theirs. That's just unlucky, I think. I don't know that you can then screw around with burning it down, assuming you can get a touchdown whenever you want one.
And even before Chase Brown ran the ball and went down, there were people suggesting you just kneel it 3 times and kick the field goal and get out of there. But as we saw in overtime, backup kicker, Cade York, and gets the bad doink. So it was an incredible back and forth game because Cincinnati had a chance to win in overtime, miss the field goal, and then still get the ball back. And Joe Burrow, ice water in his veins as well, hits T. Higgins up the sideline and then hits T. Higgins for the game-ending touchdown, not letting it get to kicks. But even that game-ending decision-making from Denver's point of view was interesting as well.
And then so you've got Joe Burrow enhancing his MVP case. And also, I mean, people are talking about Patrick Surtain as a Defensive Player of the Year candidate this year. I think in large part because there's not a clear pass rushing, obvious answer. Like, it's sort of a wide open field. And people, well, what about Patrick Surtain playing really well? I mean, he effectively did a really good job in Jamar Chase in this game, allowing Riley Moss to deal with T. Higgins, and that didn't go so well for Riley Moss. But an impressive performance from Surtain and Joe Burrow in these runs towards the awards.
Yeah, Surtain he only gave up a couple first downs in this one. Burrow completely missed Chase. It's one of the reasons I don't like post game. Surtain only gave up this number of receptions and this number of yards. I mean, it easily could have been an extra catch. But overall, I mean, the Bengals were not looking his way. Riley Moss was targeted 16 times, and he had been the guy that had solidified the cornerback position opposite Surtain and was why Denver's defense had been one of the league's best. But he got attacked. And lost often in his return. So look, Surtain's awesome. Had the forced fumble in there, so I get that, right? Other thing I wanted to talk about, Burrow's MVP candidacy, and then what Denver's decision making in overtime. Because if they had tied, they were getting into the playoffs.
Yes.
And Sean Payton, I didn't actually listen to much of what he said post game, but doesn't feel like the guy who's just going to play for the tie to get into the playoffs. Like, I think, and a lot of coaches are kind of like that. You play to win, but they had a chance with like a little over 2 minutes left. If they got one first down, they could have kneeled it out, tied, gotten into the playoffs, and eliminated Cincinnati on the spot. They go 3 and out though.
Yeah.
And that's what let Cincinnati get that final drive opportunity there.
I mean, I think he definitely, if they got the first down, I think he absolutely would have just played for the tie. I don't think he's extending the game. In fact, I'm not sure any coach in the NFL would have. If the tie gets you the win, or gets you into the postseason, you're taking the tie. Nobody's playing for anything else.
I want to touch on the Burrow thing really quick because I've brought this up a few times. Theoretically, if he's playing this well and the rest of his team is letting him down, and they're letting him down as far as wins and losses. I understand he has probably the best duo in the NFL, the best 1-2 punch in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Everything else is letting him down as far as the straight-up wins and loss column. And I know we've done this for a few different teams, but we're literally talking about 3 or 4 different field goal attempts from both teams that are affecting the Bengals being an 8-win team or an 11 or 12-win team.
Yeah.
So I think his MVP candidacy is just as strong as Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. And I am a QB wins overtime guy, right? QB wins overtime gets you there, right? If Joe Burrow has this same season next year, the Bengals are going to win 13-plus games. I'm just telling you, that's what's going to happen, right? If you play this level of football, it evens out over time here. QB wins guy. But within a season, I mean, again, we're literally talking about missed field goals in overtime, missed against the Ravens, missed field goal against the Chargers. If you flip 3 non-Joe Burrow-related field goals, and let's throw the Kansas City pass interference in there. Let's just play this game just for the sake of it. You could flip 4 games in favor of the Bengals, right, and give them 12 wins, and they're sitting here at 12-4. If you flip 3 plays for Kansas City, including one against the Bengals, and 2 times the opposing team was in game-winning field goal range. They blocked one, and the other one, the Raiders, did whatever the heck they did. The Chiefs are a 12-win team. They're sitting here at 12-4, right? So there is a fine margin, a fine line between Joe Burrow's Bengals having 12 wins and Patrick Mahomes' Chiefs having 12 wins. And I just highlighted 5, 6, 7 plays that are mostly outside of the control of those quarterbacks. But I get it at the end of the day. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, their candidacy. I'm just saying Burrow is right up there with them, playing unbelievably, putting the team on his back. And he's also helped by having Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Those guys are incredible. But offensive line inconsistency, backup right tackle in this game, Devin Cochran had to play. Defense has been awful in Cincinnati most of the time this year. Isn't his Joe Burrow's value inherently higher because he has to put the team on his back and can't make mistakes and has to put up 350, 400 yards in a lot of these games to go and win? I think it is. And he should be right in the mix with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen in that discussion.
I mean, I think that the defense thing is the big point. Like, his defense this season has been atrocious. And, Baltimore's and Buffalo's have not necessarily been amazing over the course of the year, but they're both top half defenses. Cincinnati's is a bottom third defense. And that's the difference. Like, between those three guys. And Burrow's stats, like, everyone's sort of, statistically, it's quite hard to make an argument that Josh Allen is better than Lamar Jackson in terms of MVP. Allen's sort of got the hype, the feel, the narrative, and Lamar's got the stats, right? Burrow sort of fits the middle. Like, he splits the two, really. Like, his stats are, in some ways, a lot better than Josh Allen's, and comparable to Lamar Jackson's, and in some ways, they're sort of slightly different. But anyway, his stats sort of split the two. And he's had the signature games, the MVP moments, et cetera, But the difference is his defense has been absolute garbage relative to the other two. And that's why kicker as well. But that's basically why he's not in the same position.
That's where the whole value discussion, or to find value, it's like, right. Well, if you're more valuable if your team wins. But if Josh Allen is not needed in the fourth quarter because the rest of his team is better, and Joe Burrow's needed to play all four quarters and put up 30-plus points a game, and they've lost 4 games with scoring 33-plus points this season, isn't he inherently more valuable in that case?
I'm now, like...
That's my point. Define value, right?
Like, I have an MVP vote. We're a week away from me needing to exercise it, and I have no earthly idea who I'm voting for MVP yet. What is fascinating to me now is, remember, like, we've had co-MVPs before. That basically can't happen anymore because they've changed the system where it's like a ranked system.
That happened because of votes. It wasn't like the voters were like, I know. These two guys both earned it.
But
right?
my point is,
explain that to people, because I'm just saying, I'm interrupting you a lot today. I apologize. There are a lot of people out there being like, just give it to both.
Yes.
Let's do co-MVPs because it happened in 2003 with McNair and Peyton Manning. They literally had the same number of votes. That's why.
So there's 50 votes for MVP. And in previous years, it was if the same number of people voted for a guy to be MVP, and that was the highest number of votes, those guys shared MVP, right? Which didn't necessarily mean it was a 25-25 split. If 2 guys voted for some random third rogue candidate, then it's, 24-24 split, right? But the point is, previous co-MVPs just means that the same number of the 50 voters tied, and so they just split the award. Now they've changed the system where it's like a ranked point system. So you vote Lamar, number 1, Joe Burrow, number 2, Josh Allen, number 3, Saquon Barkley, number 4, and there's points allocated for each position, first, second, third, fourth, et cetera. I think it's 5 choices. So it's almost impossible for them to tie now. I suppose technically it's still possible, but it's almost certainly not going to happen. But this is such a wide open field that I think it's going to be a fascinating, like, when you see the results split out and how it's actually panned out, it's going to be close.
And because of that method, I think Mahomes will get some rogue votes, maybe not for 1, but for 2 or something, just because of the record. And that will throw some things off. And
there's a very real chance that whoever wins will have fewer first place votes than the guy in second or third, because
Saquon will get votes.
Ranked choices, right? So Saquon might be everybody's number 2 candidate. Everybody split on which quarterback is the most valuable, but everybody sort of feels, but Saquon, 2,000 yards, like maybe he gets Eric Dickerson's record. Let's give him number 2. Everybody might vote Saquon number 2, but he ends up with the most points and he wins MVP. Like, who the hell knows how this is going to break down?
As long as you don't do whatever Romo said yesterday and say, well, Lamar's got 2.
I've heard some extremely dumb arguments for the MVP. The other one, I actually think Ryan Clark is very good at what he does and a good analyst, but he had a very bad take on MVP, in my opinion, which is he said that the best argument for for why you can't give it to anybody except Lamar Jackson is Jackson already has 2 and this is his best season. Ergo, he has to be MVP. No, because it's in, like, each season is in isolation. If 5 guys are better than him this year, it doesn't matter that his previous years are worse than this.
Other people brought up last year, no offense to Lamar, it was one of the weakest MVP
That's
seasons of all time.
Right.
It just happened that
the
other candidates weren't as strong
This
last
could be
year.
his best season by a country mile, but if 5 other guys were clearly better than him, he's not MVP. That's just a terrible logical argument.
Anyway, and look, I'm not even saying I would definitely take Joe Burrow over the other two. All I'm saying is he's equivalent in this conversation, despite an 8-8 team. And Zach Taylor came out after the game and said, hey, he's the best player in the world.
Yeah.
John Harbaugh came out and said Lamar Jackson's going to be the best quarterback of all time before the season. Like, people
it's also, I think,
build up their QBs. But the Bengals are 8-8, despite Burrow's play.
That's the thing. But it's also a very different argument now, I think, that they're 8-8 and still theoretically alive than it was a few weeks ago where they were like, they were nowhere near this.
Yeah.
And it's like their season is going to end with 6 wins, and it's just going to be a disappointment, and they're going to be nowhere near the postseason. Joe Burrow, in large part, has dragged this team still to the fringes of the playoffs. So now, if they win their final game, whether or not they make the postseason, he finishes with a winning record. And I think it's a much easier argument to make than if he finished with 6 wins and they never really got close, even if he'd still played at this level. You know what I mean?
The recency bias will be interesting too, because on Saturday, Ravens play the first game.
Yeah.
Probably going to beat the Browns. We'll see what Lamar does. And that one,
Allen probably doesn't need to play.
Allen won't play on Sunday. Burrow's going to play right after Lamar on Sunday night, with the playoffs potentially on the line if they win in Pittsburgh against a tough Steelers team. So good discussion. It was a great game. Bengals and Broncos, the last 3 teams still alive. Broncos, then the Dolphins, then the Bengals, in that order as far as controlling their playoff destiny. A lot of people said destiny is not the right word, that we overuse it there, but we'll go with it.
Why is it not the right word?
Because it's predetermined or something, and whatever. Can't control predetermined. We're not getting into that today.
No. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.